In the past 40 years, Audrey Flack has become one of the best-known contemporary artists. A groundbreaking technique in photorealism has virtually established the standard by which artists now work. Her retrospective here at the National Museum of Women in the Arts does much to exemplify the artistic genius and diversity of this American artist. Curators, art enthusiasts have categorized your work into 4 principal categories. Early works might be things of the abstract nature. You moved into a photorealistic movement of sorts. Then from there, from 78 to 82, you pretty much looked back and maybe used a broader stroke. And from 82 on, you've done exclusively sculpture. When you take a look at these 4 movements or 4 aspects of your life, were you ever cognizant of these developments as they were taking form? And did you willingly embrace them?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Was it
Yeah.
Was it on purpose?
Accidentally on purpose, and sometimes on purpose, and sometimes you can't help it on purpose. But I think the decision to use the photograph, some were decisions, and some were natural outgrowths, and some were doing what you always wanted to do, but you couldn't do it until that moment. I see something years ahead, and then I have to catch up sometimes to what I see. Sometimes I can do it then, and then society has to catch up to what I see. Sometimes I have to catch up to what I see because I can't do it yet. I'm sure you know what I mean. So with the always wanting to draw, of course you have to work very hard to draw like a master, or paint like what I wanted to paint like. But I had to go through the abstract expressionism.
In looking at a handful of your paintings, I noticed that they contain truisms along the bottom portion. One in particular says that the universe is nothing but a mental construct, and that the self alone is free and eternal. Given that thought, do you ever feel at times that the artistic implements and mediums that you were forced to use as an artist are part of this universal construct or constraint? It becomes frustrating.
It's frustrating, but then the exhilaration of those moments of bringing it all together, you do merge. So maybe the frustration's worth it. What do I say sometimes? That the worst depravity, the lowest form of existence is very often next to the highest. So the greatest freedom is next to the greatest constraint, you know, when you sort of finally break out. I guess maybe there's reality beyond us just sitting here talking. Higher, lower, you know, all around. But I think that's what art tries to do, is reach maybe a more intense or another level, transcend. That moment in the work, that moment in the life, like you're working your whole life to achieve something, or let's say a whole year to get a painting into a certain state. And that moment when it all happens is that merging, because you don't know where you are. You're so in it, you're so involved, you're of that moment, and it dissolves. So maybe it's like being dead while you're alive in the most sublime way.
You started in abstracts, and then you moved to the representational form because you found it more appealing. Why did you abandon the abstract and move more toward the realistic?
Well, see, I think my work is very abstract. I think that some of my most, quote, representational paintings are the most abstract, because an apple for me is never just an apple. An apple is a sphere. Marilyn Monroe's lipstick is a vertical cylinder. Objects have all kinds of ellipses, so their placement in space. Tremendous abstract concepts in my work. And one of the things that's beginning to happen now is that people are beginning to look at photorealism, and instead of saying, dumb painting, oh, there's an apple, there's Marilyn Monroe, or there's a car, you know. When you really look beyond that, there's some very sophisticated and very way out abstract concepts in most of the work, or at least in a lot of work of the artists that I admire.
I think there was a time when the photographic image may not have been seen as a quote higher art form. I think perhaps your pioneering in the realm of photorealism has really done much to elevate the photograph to a higher art form.
There has something to do with time. You know, you take a photograph, there it is. You freeze it, and it took that amount of time to take. Whether you have your shutter on 30 seconds or 60-second speed, whatever it is, that's how long it took. We were sitting in that other room the other day, or you could sit in this room. We were sitting with the 3 Vanitas paintings. There were 3 paintings that took 2 years. There was another painting that took a year, and another painting that, so we were sitting in a room, or we're sitting in a room now, if I can count up the number of years involved in this room, that has to have an impact. It has to have a presence in the mind. It has to have an impact on the soul and spirit of whoever looks at it. The energy and the time is in the work. And there can't be fooled by it. So a photograph is a photograph, however marvelous it is, you know. And sometimes you go into Buchenwald, like in World War II, without Margaret Burke-White's photograph, I couldn't make that painting. So she was there at that moment. But her time, whatever brought her in her life to get to stand in front of those prisoners at the moment that they were liberated. You know, I get goosebumps thinking about it. Her life is in that picture. And some pictures have that greatness and time in it. Most don't.
When I look at your work, I think of a kaleidoscopic world of color and three-dimensional effect. In fact, there are times when some of the objects in your paintings actually have reflections, and you let us on as to what's on the other side of the painting. Did this three-dimensional cry within you ultimately lead to your involvement with sculpture?
Yes. You know, you talk about did I know. That one that you're looking at that you quote from, it's called Invocation. And it has the skull, the roses, the border. Because, you know, I had worked with this gray border series, which is maybe one of my most abstract series, in that an apple will come in front of the border, objects will go in back of the border, and I want the viewer to have the power to say, hey, that's there, that's here, it's very clear. You can read exactly what's where. In that painting, there's a border, and that border was so pristine. I had it taped, I had it clean, there was nothing on it. The whole painting was finished. I was going to keep it immaculate, because it was going to be this mysterious clean border. And all of these things started coming in. They just started to come in. The last of which was, there was a tube of paint painted, and it wanted to spill out. And I took the actual color from that tube and I squeezed it, and the thick paint is on the canvas. So obviously something was going to emerge.
Metaphorically speaking, it may appear to some that as you have matured as an artist, that the scope and scale of your work has gotten considerably larger. Is this one way that you have of making a greater statement?
I think people want to be remembered or immortalized, but I think to do any great art, you have to shove that in the closet. You have to put your ego outside your studio door and outside yourself. Otherwise, you're going to have a monument to yourself. And there are too many of those around, and it's frankly, I think, bad art. So there are statements within us that are smaller, and there are statements that are heroic. I think the world needs both now. I think the world needs some intimate sculpture. I think everybody should have a piece of sculpture. I truly feel that. But in my little medicine woman here, black medicine, the angel, you know, my smaller pieces were done with the idea in mind, and I would love to do this. I would like to produce a small piece of sculpture that everyone could afford, because I think people need it. We need that kind of intimacy. But we also need a change in the heroic statement in the world. I think we need a change in who our heroes and heroines are, and how we're going to see the world for the world to survive, and that's what my public art is about.
One of Audrey Flack's latest monumental efforts is a statue of the Portuguese Queen Catherine. Catherine will stand atop a globe, welcoming the world to the city of Queens, New York.
Mainly what she was, and I'm trying to adhere to what she was a really nice person. She She was a really good person. She was a survivor. They had tried to assassinate her. She was somebody that that they had ridiculed and made fun of, and then became very beloved in England. See, I believe there's a reason Catherine's coming here now. And I have to honor what Catherine is and make her accessible and available for this society right now. And yeah, she wears her hair in these funny little curls, which I think probably when the statue goes up, everybody's going to wear their hair. I love those curls. Why not? I wish I could do that. I don't think she's going to be as soft as you think. She's not going to have a Nautilus instructor's body, but she's going to be a strong woman. She's going to be a very surviving woman, and will have a gentleness. She'll have what is needed for now. I have no doubt that whatever is going to come in is what's going to be needed.
Catherine represents the new millennium, doesn't she?
Yes. Catherine is a global object that I hope people will come from everywhere to see and to feel and to be part of. And I want her to be dazzling. You know, she's not just going to be a rusty old piece of metal that's black and dingy, but we're going to get colored stones. No ruby that size, but what we're going to get. And I hope that the light that comes shining through and hitting it, and the sphere that she's holding either will be annealed glass. You imagine how dazzling that'll be in the light. She's holding a glass globe. And if the globe can't be made out of glass, because it'll be huge, then it'll be some kind of inlaid mosaics which will glisten in the sun. And there'll be lasers hitting it. So we're really talking about a very dynamic object here.
You know, it's interesting. Catherine will be on the other side of this major metropolitan area from, of all things, the Statue of Liberty, which stands somewhat more austere and in welcoming the huddled masses is essentially saying we are the bulwark of freedom. We stand undivided and strong. Catherine is strong in her own way, but more or less has the milk of human kindness running through her veins and is more or less representative of a world community where hopefully all will be provided for.
They'll look different. You know, the Statue of Liberty, when we analyze her face, it's very stern. I love her.
Austere.
Right. She's austere and stern. Catherine's going to be much more forgiving, a much more gentle human being. There are different things that are needed now.
True.
So maybe that's the softness. She's not so ready to go to war as the Statue of Liberty is. And maybe that's what you were picking up. That's interesting too, isn't it?
Different era altogether. The Statue of Liberty was not only to welcome all to the shores, but was a warning to the rest of the world that we stand strong. Mm-hmm. We will welcome all, but we will stand against anyone, any oppression. And
very good.
You look at Catherine, and this is a different era. There's no rush out there.
Other era, right. Either we're annihilated or you're going to go to Catherine.
World community.
And you're just going to be a world community. So she can be softer.